Hey everybody, it's Ray again, and we're back with another Reddit Stories with Friends. We are actually reading No Sleep today, and I'm here with Jake.
Hey there, everybody.
We've been in kind of a horror movie kind of theme because we've been playing so many scary games, so I hope you guys enjoy. Let's get into our first post.
Moving on after the death of my wife and daughter seemed impossible, but I found something that took all the pain away. The resentment languishes like soot in my mind, the grit stuck deep in the folds of gray matter, because when I reach for a happy memory of my wife and daughter, all I can remember is the acrid smell of slow roasting flesh. I wiped both eyes as Jeff silently listened. Secretly, I hoped for the tears. They were becoming less frequent as dicing time dragged me slowly away from the incident. Making one thing clear with the perspective of removal, it doesn't heal all wounds. Sometimes it just makes the broken things impossible to fix. I'm scared. I'm scared of myself. Because I've come to accept that I'll never be able to control my own thoughts. In its own way, that's even more terrifying than the fear I felt that fucking night. Because I don't know how much of myself is left. We were silent, but not at peace. And that's why I'm glad for the tears, Jeff. I sighed, rubbing my palms against the rough denim of my jeans. It means that I'm still far enough from completely broken that I yet have something to lose. I looked at him and laughed softly. Sorry, I mumbled. Sometimes I start a conversation in my mind that I finish aloud. I glanced tentatively at him and ran my fingers through my hair. Thanks for being such a good listener. We sat in silence for a minute. The crying came without warning, and I was glad for the hot, blubbering sobs that I felt like my face was melting from the inside out. It felt good to let go as I watched myself burn. I wanted my memories to be the good things, birthdays and vacations and I love you, or hell, even the mundane shit like washing dishes, because that's real. But every time I think of them, it's the last time, and I have so much hate that I wish the memories were dead. I've long since lost track of how much time passes while I weep, but Jeff waited as I finished crying. When it was over, I breathed. I try to assuage the guilt by replaying it in my mind and deciding what the right thing should have been. But that's the thing, Jeff. That's the fucking thing. I almost laughed. Each option is the wrong one, and there were so many ways to make the choice that destroyed my humanity. I let out a long, low breath. Katie was 8 fucking years old. 8. How do you prepare a little girl for the dread of something after death that makes cowards of us all? I wiped a glob of snot onto my sleeve and nodded to myself. The simple answer, Jeff, is that I didn't. I chose to walk away from my little girl as her severed lungs filled with blood. I told myself that I would be back in time to ensure that she didn't die alone, but I knew I was lying to myself. I knew. I shook my head, waiting for the tears. I knew. The tears didn't fall. I really believed that I had a chance to save my wife. Is that worth the cost? Letting my daughter die alone for the possibility that my wife and I might live together for years, decades more? I grabbed the fraying cloth of the couch cushion. I told my hand to relax its icy grip. My hand ignored me. I let out a long, slow whoosh of air. If it was worth the risk, how good would my chances have to be? Should I have walked away from Katie in exchange for a 50-50 chance of saving her? What about a 30% chance? 10? At what point do I just give up on saving my wife, except that the two most important people in my world would die from their shredded torso wounds, and just comfort the nearest one? Only one tear this time. I let it linger. Of course, I couldn't save my wife. Jennifer was sliced apart even worse than Katie when I found her. She grabbed my shirt and begged me not to let her die alone. She was too out of it to understand that I needed to go back, that I had to find our daughter before it was too late. I bit my lip hard enough to make it bleed. The only thing that Jennifer understood is that I walked away from her when she needed me most. I looked out at the gray sky. Of course, there was no point. Katie was dead by the time I found her. I bit my lip harder just to see if I could still feel pain. I stopped when the blood stained my shirt, and when I went back to Jennifer, I found that she had died facing away from me. I leaned in to face Jeff. But you already knew that. The gag was tight enough to ensure that breathing would be painful, but his bloodshot eyes communicated everything unreachable words could hope to share. I looked down at his naked body bound to the chair. The key is to wrap each rope around the individual limbs before binding them together. That prevents any clever slipping out of the restricted arm, no matter how painfully they dislocate their shoulders. You kept saying that it wasn't personal when you turned my wife and daughter into coleslaw. I get it. I really do. You're a psychopath who found the right business. I nodded. So, don't take it personally when you think of who I had to hurt to track you down, Jeff. This is therapeutic for me, and you are on the unfortunate receiving end. I stood and stepped towards the machine, my footsteps echoing eerily in the empty building. Jeff whimpered. I smiled, feeling devious. You're right, Jeff. I'm lying. This is personal. I turned the knob and the machine buzzed to life with an electronic wee. It was charged and ready to start. The current is set low enough so that you won't die, even after a couple of hours. He groaned. Oh, I know you want to die. I'm perfectly aware of how painful this is. I breathed deeply. And I promise you, Jeff, to spare you the fate that was inflicted upon my family. I leaned in, dropping my voice to a whisper as my sour breath licked the oily crevices of his grime and sweat-covered face. I will make sure that you don't die alone. I couldn't place exactly what sound he was making, but I'm mostly sure that had the gag been removed, he would have been crying. I reached down and patted the alligator clip that was biting down on the tip of his. Good for me that you're not well hung, because it would be tricky getting that clamp onto something bigger than 3 inches. I smiled and visually traced the cord as it snaked around the chair and terminated in the thick electrode lodged deep in his. It'll hurt like hell before the nerves die, but with this current and voltage, death is a long way off. When that finally happens, I'll associate a new memory with the acrid smell of slow roasting flesh. I stroked his cheek softly. I'm going to turn on this machine, leave, and then come back after a long time to see how you're holding up. He stopped shaking and got quiet, just staring at me with the soft tears that I seemed to have lost. Jeff was begging me. I shook my head. Both of us will spend the rest of our lives in pain, my friend, because we're both damned. I walked over to the machine, slowly dragging my fingertips along the switch. And in both our cases, it's entirely your fault. I looked down at the floor, taking in the Star Wars socks that Jennifer had bought me for Christmas. Then I looked at Jeff. The difference is that my life sentence is much longer than yours. Now grit your teeth and grind them into dust because there's no reason to respect your body when you have no hope of ever being happy again. It was that exact moment when Jeff found a way to sob through his gag. I smiled, and then I flipped the switch.
Never leave a chair empty at night. You don't know who might take a seat. We were pretty superstitious. All of us were. My mom, my dad, grandparents and teachers, neighbors, coaches, and bus drivers. You want to
We
have
lived
space
our
for someone
lives
that
by
might
many
visit.
traditions.
You just
That
simply
might
don't
have
want them to
seemed
visit without
naive
your approval
or
first.
old-fashioned at first
It's
glance.
something our
There
village
is a
people
simple
made a long time
reason
ago for us having
with the
them,
item
though.
stacked on top
We
that had
all
been
lived
shoved in his
fine
head all
and
his
well
life.
obeying the communal gut feeling, and it never disappointed as long as we listened to our sayings. Not all of them sounded as inherently disturbing as the empty chair did, of course. Some were just signs we looked out for.
He told me
Like,
that he heard someone
if there's a
whisper in his
butterfly in your
ear to wake
house,
him up.
it means you'll get a visitor soon. Others were little tricks that could ease your life, like if you want a visitor to leave your home, a bit of salt poured in their shoe will do the trick. And some were, well, a bit disturbing, I guess. Like, if you leaned over a railing, the devil will grab you and pull you towards the ground. That one we can't really fact check, unfortunately. As I said, there were many of those. Phrases they kept repeating so nobody could ever forget. And the only one I've heard the most in my life happens to be the one about the chair. Never leave a chair in your bedroom empty at night. Dad repeated it every night like a prayer when I was still little, and Mom would come by later in the evening to make sure I had a backpack, some books, or just a jacket laying on top of my desk chair. It was the only one in my room. As I grew older, they didn't need to remind me anymore. The phrase was deeply ingrained in my brain. I still heard Mom's footsteps at night, though. I suppose she wanted to be really sure nobody would be taking a seat next to me at night. When I was younger, I didn't understand why this was so important to everyone I knew. To me, there was one simple solution to the whole hext altogether. Simply not having a chair in your room. You don't really need it when you have a bed anyways. Except when you're doing homework, maybe. Unfortunately, however, removing the chair was not an option. And there was a reason for that too, of course. As I said, superstitions are kind of our thing. As terribly afraid as the people of our community were of forgetting the empty chair, they were even more anxious of what might happen if there was no chair at all. It was a very strange concept, and I can't quite say how it started. Someone probably once tried to remove the chair and was met with a terrible fortune, and so they took the risk of having the chair in their rooms. I never cared for strange ideas and superstitions of our community much, not until I understood what happens when you don't listen to them. You can never have every single member of a community obeying the same rules. Some people are inherently against going with the flow. Risk takers, show-offs, adrenaline junkies. Then you have the ones who never listened much as kids and grew up not caring for old traditions. Especially when they read and watch all kinds of horror stories and start to realize that something isn't necessarily scary just because someone says so. I suppose many kids now just think the whole saying is a way for parents to make sure they keep the rooms clean. And so, of course, there were the ones who intentionally kept a chair, or even more, welcomely empty for whoever might visit at night. They called themselves brave. We call them cautionary tales, because they all would regret it when the visitor came. The story I know the best is the one of Billy Tucker. Billy never cared much for any of the tales the older ones tell. Billy liked to tempt fate more than anything. While he lived with his parents, they made sure he was safe even if he didn't approve. But Billy grew older and bought his own little home in the same street as us. It was the very first night that he would sleep there alone, and I suppose he forgot about the chair. Or possibly he just wanted to see what would happen if he ignored the phrases. I saw him getting his mail the following day. He looked tired and disturbed. He told me he kept thinking there was someone inside his home, but that wasn't possible. Nobody ever broke into a house around here. When he looked around, he saw nothing but a jacket that wasn't there before hanging by his closet. You know, it was probably my ma. That woman is anxiety personified, Billy joked back then. That was the first day. After that, Billy hardly left his home anymore. I'd see his parents stop by at times to bring him food, but he never stepped outside. Apparently, he was slowly but surely losing his mind. It lasted a week until his parents found him hanging from his bedroom closet. It was a devastating tragedy for sure, but I wasn't completely convinced that it had anything to do with the chair. Billy had been a troubled kid, that was no secret. However, whether I really believed in it or not didn't matter. My gut feeling had merged with the one of the community. Whether I was afraid of the empty chair or not, as long as I lived in this strange village with all its rules and sayings, I would stick with them. Even if it was just for the sake of my parents' mental health. And I did, all those years. Until I moved far away from the village. Living in a big city was far different than anything I'd have ever imagined. I suddenly had a sense of freedom I never perceived before. At first, it was overwhelming. All the places I could go to, and all the things I could do. After a while, I realized that this was exactly where I belonged. I found new friends, got a nice studio apartment. But of course, the words I heard all my life stuck with me, even far away from our village. I suppose a part of me believed in the superstitions, at least to some degree, but I always believed that I left them with me at my old home. I didn't believe they would follow me, not until that night. I came home rather late after drinking at the pub with a few friends. I could hardly keep my eyes open, and I went to bed pretty swiftly. With the last bit of consciousness, I heard the bag on my chair in the room slip to the ground. My gut kept telling me to go and pick it up, but my drunken and tired mind said that everything would be fine. I should have listened to my gut. It was still pitch dark out when I woke up by the sounds. It sounded as if someone was moving inside my apartment. At first, I didn't register much. I guess for a moment I forgot I lived alone. When the realization came to me, my eyes opened wide. My heart started racing, and I had to control my breathing. I collected all my courage and quietly moved my upper body up so I could inspect my surroundings. There was nobody there, at least as far as I could tell, with the dim light shining through my window. To calm down my nerves, I got up from the bed and turned on the lights. The good thing about studio apartments is that there aren't many rooms that someone could hide. I checked behind the corner where my kitchen aisle. I checked under my bed and in the bathroom. There were no signs of someone being inside. Until I checked the coat rack. Most of my jackets are black, so I didn't notice it right away. But there was a coat that didn't belong to me, as well as a black top hat. My eyes moved to the ground, and when I saw the big, leathery shoes with the dirt underneath them, my entire body started shaking. Hello? I called out into the empty room. There was no response. Of course I called the police, and they checked every single corner. But there was not a single sign of anyone breaking in. As they arrived, the coat and shoes were gone, but I still saw the dirt stains on the ground. The police were clueless. I'm not sure whether they thought I was insane or on drugs, but finally, they left, and I was alone again. A part of me wondered if I possibly dreamt it all up, or if I mixed up the coat with one of my own, but in the end, I knew I was lying to myself. Someone had been in here, and it was my own fault for leaving the chair empty. I figured there was one simple solution to my problem, so the following evening I made sure to stack enough items on top of the chair to make sure nobody would think about taking a seat in there. It seemed like a decent enough plan, considering the ridiculous superstition I was following. I didn't realize, however, that there wasn't going back after you messed up once. That's what happened to Billy. On the first night, you questioned the act. You can't believe that there could be anything true to that old saying, and how could it? You make yourself completely paranoid. The following night, I was still confident, at least to some degree. The fear was still very much present, but I believed to have a solution. I had books and clothes stacked upon my chair, And after a couple of hours of tossing in bed, I managed to fall asleep. What you don't realize is the effect the visitor has on you. It starts nibbling on your mind. If you invite it inside once, it learns your scent and it will continue coming back each night. No matter where you go or if you stay up all night, it won't stop until your mind can't take it anymore. I knew that. I'd heard all the stories. I just never believed how cursed we truly were. That night, I woke up to the sound of a whisper. The words made no sense to my mind, but they were near and felt thoroughly unkind. A hand was grazing my face, but when I opened my eyes, there was nobody there. The next day, I thought about staying with a friend, but I was afraid I might burden them with the same fate if it followed me. So I got a hotel room instead. I woke up when I heard a hollow laugh. It didn't stop until the sun came up again. For days, I didn't sleep. Whenever I went, I knew it was there with me, chewing on my mind and swallowing my free will. As the days progressed, the whispers became more clear. It was as if it was pulling me over the side where we could communicate, a side where I could make sense out of its words. Come with me. You won't be missed. Your choice has already been made. The voice was omnipresent. It kept whispering and laughing until every moment of my life was drained in the color of nothingness. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I didn't feel. I was just afraid that if it pulled hard enough, I wouldn't be able to come back, just like Billy. We were pretty superstitious. All of us. We all lived fine and well, obeying the communal gut feeling, and it never disappointed as long as we listened to our sayings. I thought about that when every other thought in my mind stopped making sense. I thought about the things I was told ever since I was a child, the words that might even be able to help your life. Like, if you want a visitor to leave your home, a bit of salt poured into their shoes will do the trick. It was a long shot, but the visitor was always polite to leave its shoes and coat by the door. I don't know how permanent the trick is, but last night I finally slept on my own again. Wow, that was really intense, and I got a little bit too much into it there.
Yeah, I kind of feel you on that one. I did the same thing.
The daughter honestly had a big plot twist for me. I had Jake read ahead of time, and realizing what actually happened at the end caught me off guard and made me a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, I definitely felt the same with the one you read.
The chair was just like very eerie, and like I had like a lot of superstitions as a child too, and I'm just like, maybe I'll take the mirror that's in my room out of it. That is one of my childhood fears. All right, well, we'll catch you guys next time. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and we'll definitely have more. Ciao.